from the mere mortals. Having the numbers is fine, but actually tolerating the pain of hitting those numbers and sustaining it is a completely different thing. But this is a good ride here by Pippin Reindering. Looks like he's going to get across the gap. A nice bit of high torque, low cadence work, pushing a huge gear just to power himself across this gap. And that's going to give us two Dutch riders in the move. So a good day so far. And just confirming the rider that did take the top of the King of the Mountains, it was Dylan Hopkins of Australia ahead of Bussato, Lolland, Meyer, Van Bell, who's at the back there in the controversial, shall we say it, white and orange kit, which we believe is going to be changed in the future, and the rider from Luxembourg, Arno Wallenborn. But actually Wallenborn was with Reindering, but it looks like he's just been dropped. So we're going to have two Dutch men in front, but the bunch not too far behind at all. And this is that long drag that I was talking about, but just look at that view behind of the French Alps. Absolutely gorgeous. Not a million miles away at all from the border of Italy either. It's such a beautiful part of the world. But it's the French team now who are riding on the front, setting this tempo, not the Danes. I'm trying to see where Simon Dolby is in the yellow jersey. Can't quite catch him just yet. I'd imagine he's just in the clutch of riders at the front there. But it is the French leading the chase, with Matthias Rondel in the white jersey, keeping that warm for Simon Dolby. He's the best placed of the French riders. But yeah, the French clearly with ambition today, Jens.
Yeah, they are riding with intent. It looks like they are have a lot of confidence in Matthias Rondel. He is a good climber. We haven't really seen, again, that long climbing performance from him, but the French team clearly having some confidence. We see Dolby just sitting in about 20th position with 2 or 3 of his teammates around him, so he's safely in the peloton, but you would expect that with the amount of riders still left there.
Yeah, I did spot him, well spotted, just like you say. And not too far away from him was the man in green, Anders Foldager. So 20 seconds is the gap. So this gap now under the pressure, under the impetus of the French team, who have a couple of riders. Actually, they've got 2 riders in the top 10. Axel Huens is also there at 48 seconds. He's in 9th position, just in front of Francesco Bussato. He runs out the top 10 at 50. In fact, it's the top 13 riders that are spread by a minute. But Matthias Rondel sits in 2nd place overall at only 13 seconds behind. So very densely packed. And then we have 2 of the riders from Switzerland, Jan Christian and Robin Dons at 36 and 41, and then Joseph Blackmore at 42. Yesterday's stage winner Ivan Romeo of Spain is there at 46 seconds, and then Lucas Nurkar in 7th at 47 seconds. Good to hear from, in good French as well, Ivan Romeo talking about that victory yesterday, the biggest win of his career, a dream to win a stage of the Tour de l'Avenir, but didn't really fancy his chances on today's stage. But I've no doubt he's got nothing to lose, has he? But he is a slightly bigger rider. But after that performance, he'll certainly try and go deep today. But what other riders do you think from the from the Spanish team could go well today? Because he did say he'd be working in the service of others today.
Yeah, there are a couple good climbers, but there's one who's still pretty close on GC that I'm looking at is Fernando Tercero. He's been up here in a previous edition last year. He was not quite there at the end, but he finished 18th overall and slightly better in the final 2 climbing stages. So if he's improved a little bit coming into this year, then he would be someone to look at. But we do, of course, also still have Enecoitz Asparen close in GC, so we'll be interested to see what he can do. Maybe slightly less known as a pure climber, but we'll have to see. Of course, with this category, we could still see some changes in sort of rider profile, riders developing more towards a sort of a climber type rider when they haven't really done that before. Those things could still happen. So I think those 2 riders, but maybe with a slight edge for Tercero.
There's a couple of Spanish riders just tucked in behind the French squad. Just lost 5 seconds, so 25 seconds to the group up the road. Still working well together. We're still on that uncategorized drag. Still climbing up through the valley. The dramatic, awe-inspiring views of the Alps behind with their snow-capped peaks. But a warm day, around 26 degrees in Maribel today, so nowhere near the stifling conditions of the last few days, which saw a couple of changes to the schedule. The day before yesterday we saw the stage shortened, and yesterday's stage was brought forward 2 hours earlier, so they didn't have to suffer in the high temperatures that we get in the late afternoon. So thankfully a little bit cooler today, which will be very welcome. There is the profile of today's stage. We've got over the second category climb, we've descended, and we're just on that little ridge in the middle of that profile before dropping down into the valley and then picking things up again. And when we get to the top of the Col de la Loze, there are different measurements on the top of the Col de la Loze depending on what point you get at the top, but we're going up to well over 2,200 meters, in fact 2,296 meters. So altitude for the first time in this year's Tour de l'Avenir will come into play. And because we start so low, we drop down and lose a lot of elevation. We actually start at about 500 meters. They will go through the various stages, and it'll be interesting to see how some of these younger riders actually adapt to riding at altitude. And if there's certain riders from different countries that come to the floor, we know the Colombians, of course, live and race at altitude a lot. But will many of these riders be spending time at altitude camps compared to their elite level counterparts?
Certainly some of them, but I would say not many. I think there's a couple, of course, a couple of riders who are already racing for professional teams. I think I read a couple interviews about people already saying they spent some time at altitude, but I think for a lot of those riders it's more about just doing it once, see how the body reacts. It's not necessarily a performance thing, it's more like just looking at what happens and how we can use that the next couple of years for most of those riders. I don't think there will have been more than just a couple of riders who've done specific altitude preparation for this race. But of course there are going to be some differences in how the riders deal with the kind of altitude like we're seeing today. And the only two real races, well, I guess 2 races plus a couple smaller races have had this kind of altitude. We've seen the Stelvio finish in the Giro Next Gen this year. We've seen altitude before in the Tour de l'Avenir. So a lot of riders will have already had some experience, and then of course the Colombian riders constantly race at these kinds of altitudes, and even higher in fact. So they will be slightly better adapted, but a lot of these riders, it's going to be the first experience of, first of all, such a long climb, and then especially that altitude that is going to come into it right at the end.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how these riders do cope as the air gets thinner. Starts to come into effect generally around 1,500 meters and above, where you start to feel the proper effects of at altitude, especially performing at this sort of level and asking the body to do this with that rarefied atmosphere. The body just becomes increasingly less efficient. There's less oxygen is available per breath. But most riders now at the elite level, of course, spending many weeks at altitude per year. In between most races they'll be at altitude, depending of course on their respective objectives. But I think the understanding now is if you don't train for long periods of time at altitude, you are at a distinct disadvantage. So everybody pretty much does it, whether they're performing for the classics, the Grand Tours. Everybody will spend a bit of time at altitude or use oxygen tents, which happens to a lot of riders do use those as well to save spending multiple weeks away from their families as well.
Yeah, it just has become part of cycling, and it's how the sport is evolving, and no doubt we'll see similar innovations in the coming years. There are probably already riders doing things that we don't even know about to just gain some more performance in well, hopefully in the legal way, we'll say. There are always people living on the edge, but certainly altitude training is it's just a choice that you make. It's not something illegal, it's just an investment. And yeah, some of the riders will have done it, but a lot of the riders not able to do things like that, just being away from home for so long. A lot of riders obviously still studying at this kind of age. So you can't just pack up your whole life and sit somewhere on a mountain for 4 weeks at a time.
Exactly. Well, this is the peloton wending their way down this descent. It's best part of 8 or 9 Ks to the bottom. We've got, well, they've commenced the climb with 23.2 Ks to go, and not much flat at all. They're from one descent, and they swing up the Col de la Loze. The bottom part of the climb is actually quite a big main road, quite gradual, but it's the second part of the climb and the final part of the climb where it really starts to kick up. Average gradient, in fact, for the first 8 Ks bounces between 7 and 8%. There's a slightly flatter midsection, a couple of Ks where you can pick up the pace a little bit. I wouldn't exactly call it a plateau, but I rode it this year at the Tour de France reasonably fast. You can get it back onto the big ring, roll it round for a bit for a couple of Ks, and then you begin the second phase. Another couple of Ks at 7%, another flatter section, and then the road really starts to kick up. So it's the final half or the final third of the climb, absolutely brutal. And then as we move into the last 4 Ks, it doesn't dip below 11%, or hardly does. It bounces between 11 and 10% with pitches of 20%. It is a cruel, cruel climb, and we'll certainly see, should I say, a very deserved winner. But this breakaway aren't being given too much of a lead at all, and it's Great Britain now getting in the mix, setting this tempo, most likely for, as you said, Nurika or Joseph Blackmore. Josh Goliker, Robert Donaldson and Jack Rudkin-Gray are the rest of the GB team. Unfortunately lost Max Walker the other day, but yeah, they've got big aspirations because Nurika is an exceptionally good climber. Lost a little bit of time the other day, just got caught the wrong side of a split, but still sits inside the top 10. But watch out for those 2 riders from Great Britain. And I did see Archie Ryan not too far away as well, the wonderful climber, well, all-rounder in fact, but a great climber from Ireland too. But the man in the green sat not too far from the head of affairs. That was Anders Falldegger, and looks like they might be setting the pace along with Great Britain, just to make sure that Dolby is in a good position. I don't think the bunch at the moment are worried about this move out in front, are they? It's literally just setting things up now for the climb and just to shape the rest of the race. I don't think anybody in this breakaway poses a threat. I don't think they're actually chasing. They're just doing their job, aren't you, and keeping that pace high.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering why those 2 riders have suddenly come up to the front, one from Great Britain and one from Denmark. They're not necessarily bringing their team up, so it does seem like they're just pacing. Maybe someone has spotted some riders struggling or something like that, just some of the GC riders, and they're wanting to set that pace to keep them behind. But it sort of seems unlikely. Yeah, you could also say just making the race hard, but then you would think that the leaders have to be right at the front as well to benefit from that pace. So I'm not quite sure what they're doing. It seemed like France was doing a fine job controlling it. Don't really see the point in trying to take over and with just one rider. So I would say it's a weird move, or I just don't understand it. That is also possible, of course.
There's been some interesting moves in this race. A few of them we've managed to explain. Others have just left. We've just left scratching our heads. But it has been fascinating to watch these stars of the future. The Tour de l'Avenir now in its 59th edition. Started back in 1961. The first winner was in fact an Italian. That was a Guido Di Rosso. And over the years we've seen some of the biggest champions in the sport apply their trade here early on and gone on to win the Tour de France. 7 winners of the Tour de l'Avenir have gone on to win the Tour de France in the past. Of course, most recently Egan Bernal and a certain Tadej Pogacar. And Tadej Pogacar, and he did win the Tour de l'Avenir, only 2 years later he won the Tour de France, and that's absolutely amazing. Still only a very young man, second twice the winner, but yeah, just 2 years on from winning this very race, he was winning the Tour de France, which is absolutely amazing. And it didn't take too long for Egan Bernal, of course, to win either. I think it was 3 years later when he won the Tour de France. But it is Great Britain leading down, Falldegger in second place, and then the massed ranks of the French team. Maybe this is just for positioning play as well, because as you said, if you do put a rider on the front, generally your team are just behind, but they just might be wanting to pick the lines on this descent, and they do. And a very talented, well, Joseph Blackmore, who is one of their riders for the GC, is a very good mountain biker. In fact, was 13th in the world under 23 mountain bike championships that took place just a couple of weeks ago. I'm not too sure who this rider is on the front at the moment, but it could be him. but I'd imagine if it was, he'd be sitting back a little bit. But not using too much extra energy on the descent like this, but 5 more Ks of the descent, and we'll start the big climb yet.
Yeah, I think well, the British team have got those 2 riders up in the GC, and it's for both of them, it's going to be, I think, their first real go at this kind of climbing, and the first go at altitude as well. Certainly, maybe they've done climbs like these in races before, but not really on that razor's edge trying to perform. So that's going to be very interesting to see where they're at. They're both really young riders. Just going to have to check, but I think they're both second year under 23s, so yeah, they've got a long time ahead of them, still 2 years in the under 23 category if they choose to stay here, or they could move up earlier as most of the biggest talents do, but they're still on the younger side, so this is just going to be that first test to see where they're at. And that's the thing, we've got maybe 2 favorites that we know what they can do, but there are going to be, in the list of so many different riders that might be able to do it, there's probably going to just be one who really excels, and I'm really excited to see who it's going to be.
Yep, we're not too sure yet, as they just pick their way down. Nice little bit of descending here. A few gaps being left between the wheels as riders just descending at slightly different speeds. And there will be a little bit of separation here in relation to the ability of these riders to descend, but right on the front at the moment, not taking too many risks at all. It's all about getting down here as safely as possible. As you can see on the right-hand side, the road has been dug up, actually. There's like a drainage ditch that you want to avoid, but so far so good. Not piling on too much pressure here, just making sure they get to the bottom of this descent nice and safely. He's certainly not throwing his bike around here. This looks to be more like setting a decent tempo, not taking any risks at all. And quite often, the best place to be on a descent is to pick your own line and have that empty road in front of you, save for the motorbike. But that drainage ditch, it's right on the line sometimes, isn't it? They've got to be really careful of that one, just not to make sure they don't get the wheel caught in it. So 26.5 kilometres to go now. 23.2 of those kilometres all uphill to the finish. The mighty Col de la Loze awaits the Tour de l'Avenir field here today. A short, explosive stage. This is the group just up the road at the moment. They've only got a slender lead. They've stripped out the time gap, but I believe it's only about 20 seconds or so now. So the group has actually fragmented on the descent here to show the rider off in front. A couple of riders also getting dropped out. They've been dropped out the back of the bunch, we're hearing too. That's no real surprise, and that will certainly be the theme as we head up the Col de la Loze. And a lot of these climbs now, many of the big cols all over the world, in fact, especially in this part of France, they count down every single kilometre. There's a little stone at the side of the road in yellow and white, which gives you the height that you're at and how many kilometres to go. Good and bad. It just reminds you quite often how slow you're going and still what's to come. And also gives you the average gradient of the next kilometre. They're really handy, actually, if you don't know the climb. And there are going to be a lot of riders here. They will be riding this for the very first time yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think many riders have got the resources to just do a recon of all these mountain stages ahead of the Tour de l'Avenir. The national federations obviously usually aren't on huge budgets, so it's already a challenge to get out here with a proper team sometimes. So a recon is definitely not on the cards for all but maybe a very select few who do manage to recon it. But of course it's different from riding it yourself, but there are images out there from 2 Tour de France's at least, so that will have been their homework probably going into this race. Just seeing the peloton not really split on that descent, it does seem like the British rider was sort of maybe even pushing the tempo down a little bit, which is interesting. If you just couple that with the fact that Lucas Nurkar lost some time yesterday on the descent or on the climb before, we don't really know where he lost that time, but it's just off the back of that group, maybe not too comfortable on the descent. I'm just guessing at some kind of reason for why the British rider was at the front there. That might be a possible explanation.
Yeah, you're quite right. course, the man on the front dictates the pace. And I did notice, certainly said that he certainly didn't look to be pushing it, wasn't throwing the bike into the corners. In fact, I would say that it was a rather cautious descent, and that might be the exact reason. As we were talking about before, there's always within teams, even at the elite level, there are riders who are very good at descending, who excel. Your extremes, of course, the likes of Tom Pidcock, and there are other riders who are pretty cautious. I mean, Pierre Latour at the moment is having a lot of difficulties on descents. We've seen him dropped on several occasions because it's a real psychological game, especially if you're coming back from an injury. You rationalise things in a slightly different way, and quite often, the more that you tense up, the more nervous you are. It has that snowball effect. As soon as you tense up on a bike and you're trying to descend, the bike just becomes more and more difficult to control. It's all about trying to relax as best as you can, but that is easier said than done.
Yeah, and it's also about experience descending. It's just if you've never been in the mountains, and again, some of these riders will have very little experience at descending such long descents. Especially today, it wasn't too bad, but on Sunday we're going to see a very, very long descent off the Col d'Iseran. It's just a different experience. You don't get that on when we see a crash behind. That did look like some of the Danish riders, but the yellow jersey is where he needs to be in that 10th place.
Yeah. Just heard on the radio there, no doubt you heard that as well. 40 seconds it is, 40 seconds. It's the French team on the front, and that was an innocuous corner. They certainly weren't hitting that corner at too much pace. British rider there just looking around. Anders Foldager and sat behind. These are our two leaders. This is Francesco Bussato, and the winner of the under-23 Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and the under-23 Italian road champion, and he's got Lolland with him from Norway as well. Zacharias Kolla Lolland, and they've got a lead of 40 seconds, and they dropped the rest of the breakaway on the descent. That's when they went clear, and there are going to be, I would imagine, a couple of riders still in between. I don't think we've caught the rest of the breakaway, which contains Pepin Reindrink and a couple of others, Arthur Meyer, Louis Van Bell, and Arno Wallenborn, and Dylan Hopkins as well is in between. So 40 seconds. We are on the lower slopes now of the climb of the Col de la Loze. But as I said, the opening couple of Ks, opening 5 or 6 kilometres, about 7%. Steep enough, but nothing compared to what lays ahead on those fearsome final slopes, that uneven gradient. So difficult to get the pacing right. Who is going to reign supreme today? A warm, warm day. Jersey's already unzipped. So this is going to take them probably the best part of an hour, isn't it? About 50-55 minutes of climbing.
It is going to be a very long climb. It's going to take ages, and yeah, we really don't know what's going to happen, except that everyone's going to suffer, and at some point one rider is going to cross the finish line first, and very likely that that rider will be on his own. The peloton, they are setting a pace, but it's not the highest pace ever yet. It's still a lot of riders able to sit in there, but of course this is just the first kilometer of 23 kilometers of climbing. So their teams are just going to be trying to set up their team leaders, probably just going to do the pace that those riders think they can maintain for an hour, and nothing higher than that, just to give them the best shot at not blowing up towards the end of the climb.
Exactly. Well, the fastest times, well, there's various Strava times, different segments, different parts of the climb, but it is just over an hour. Michael Rees has got the fastest time. I have to look back and do a bit of a deep dive on the... sorry, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, Michel Rees, that actually happened in the Tour de l'Avenir. They a couple of years ago, I don't remember exactly which year, but they started exactly from the bottom of the climb, just a 23-kilometer stage. So that obviously looks quite a lot like today's stage, just a bit shorter even.
There we go. So that was 1 hour, 2 minutes, 58 seconds. Clément Champoussin, 1:03:11, and Nicolas Prodhomme, 1:04. So classy bike riders. So that gives you an indication of how long they're going to be riding for. As we just see, the Australian rider caught and passed his time at the front and is done. That was Dylan Hopkins, who won the first climb of the day. But the gap for our two riders holding steady at about 30 seconds, as you can see, well into the climb now. And we get a good close look at this man. It looks like he's come off, doesn't it? Well, clearly he's taken some skin off on his Castelli shorts there. He's got a graze to his left arm as well, so clearly has come off at some point. I'm not too sure at what point that was. Was that on the descent? It's an interesting one, that, but we certainly didn't see that, but it doesn't seem to have affected him too much.
No, there's two possibilities. Either he took so many risks that he went on the last descent, we didn't see it, and he got back up before anyone else could catch him, or it happened even earlier in the stage, and then he was able to still get in the breakaway. So of course it looks like it's not affecting him too much, as we just saw a Dutch rider come up to the front of the peloton. So the Dutch team apparently not happy with the pace, wanting to increase that pace even more.
Currently sitting in 10th place on the general classification at 50 seconds, and poses the biggest threat. But right now, the tempo being set by Great Britain. The rider from the Netherlands just slotted into the wheel there as well. Spain just moving up a little bit too. A couple of riders from Luxembourg, but the group's still pretty big. Just could see our yellow jersey there, the maillot jaune, Simon Dolby of Denmark. Anders Foldege doing a great job, never too far away from his teammates. As we look at the full lineup of the Great Britain team, Nurikar, Blackmore, Goliker, Walker is now gone. And then we've got Rob Donaldson and Jack Rootkin-Gray, fourth in the World Under-23 Road Championships. Rides for St Piran Continental team. Not too sure what he's doing next year, but I'd imagine he might be moving up to the next level. A real talent, multiple race wins abroad and domestically this year for him. And they do have a very strong team. So there's the gap. 30 seconds, 21 Ks to go. Do you think we're going to see any early moves here, or do you think the length of this climb, a lot of riders are going to bide their time? Because it is, even by World Tour standards, this is one of the longest climbs that is ridden. I mean, there's very few climbs over, or cols over 20 Ks, normally 10 or 15 Ks, but this is particularly long.
Yeah, no, the early moves would have had to happen earlier than the start of the climb. At this point, it's just going to be one long effort, and just physiologically, it's so much better to wait to go over your limit to the end. Because if you go too hard at the start, you're going to blow up. And there's also, we've got that flatter section in the middle, but even on these gradients, there's just that little bit of drafting. It's not much, but it does count up over the kilometers, and the time you spend in the peloton just doing that even pace, no accelerations, it's going to add up. And I think it's not a smart move if you want to win the stage to go early. These riders have committed, of course, but I don't think they're really looking to win the stage at this point. I think they tried something at the start, but they'll know that the peloton is bearing down, and they're going to be caught at some stage. But Brusato is doing quite a good job, actually, holding on here. He's dropped his companion Lowland. He's going for it at the moment.
He certainly is. Lowland certainly hasn't given up here. Actually, as the gradient has just lessened ever so slightly, he's back on the power and riding at his own rhythm. And the key thing on a climb this long is that if you do feel yourself drifting into that red zone, and you want any hope of trying to perform well, you do need to back off a little bit. And almost ride a negative split, because this climb, I think it's fair to say, you can split into two distinct halves. You've got that plateau, the slightly flatter section midway up, and then the gradients are rarely below double digits for the second phase of the climb. The final 10 Ks, as I've described in detail, absolutely brutal. But a good tempo being set here, and this bunch already looks like it's down to about 40 or 50 riders.
Yeah, not too many riders left, but there are going to be even more riders dropping off. It's Donaldson of the Great British team setting the tempo at the moment. Thibaut also in second place for the Netherlands. And then it looks like it's Rondel already in third place. So the GC rider for France is right up there. A couple of riders still with him. Here we are looking at the Danish team with Foldege in the green jersey, and then Simon Dalby in the yellow jersey, who's leading the classification. We'll see if he is able to hold on. He's certainly one of the better climbers in this race, but there are some challengers on the horizon.
Yeah, they certainly are. So good pace, as you said, being set by Rob Donaldson, who rides normally for Trinity. Good sprinter is Donaldson. Very fast finisher, but being used on the lower slopes of this climb as we look again at the top 10 in the general classification. Coming into stage 6. Such a tough weekend of racing ahead. There's one of those signs I was talking about, and that one will say 20 kilometers to go, and will give you the average gradient for the next kilometer. So if your head unit packs up and you don't end up speaking to your direct sportif, the information's there. Old school, analog at the side of the road. Depends. If you're on a good day, they'll trip by pretty quick, but if you're on a bad day, sometimes it's best not to look at those signs. They just tell you what's coming up. Sometimes it's best to clear the head. And a climb like this, Jens, riders will have different ways of breaking it down, depending, of course, on what their ambition is, what their job is as well, what their ability is. How do you ride big, long climbs? Do you like to break them down into parts, or do you put your brain in a different place, or do you just try and completely zone out?
Yeah, it depends on the scenario. It depends on the type of rider you are, the type of personality. I think most of these riders will have a job to do. Just looking down the peloton, there might be 15 riders who are looking to perform on this stage, and the rest is just there in service of someone else. But for the leaders, it's just about following the wheel, maybe sometimes looking at your numbers and seeing where you're at if you're still dealing with the intensity. And other than that, it's just sitting on the wheels if you're in that zone. You just have to, well, you can't really save energy, but you're just trying to sit in and wait for the final steep section, because I doubt that anyone's going to make a move before that sort of plateau section in the middle. It's just going to be waiting for the final 10 kilometers, and probably even a little bit more than that.
Yep, I think you're right, as you say, for the reasons you've just described. But Bussato right now, 20 seconds is his lead to the peloton behind. They'll see him on these slightly straighter stretches of road up ahead. It's the Netherlands who are now doing the riding. Pepijn Reindering slotted into second place. The under-23 champions jersey completely unzipped, shall I say. And just behind him, Matthias Rondel of France. He's sitting in P3 there in the white jersey of best young rider. Still Foldager looking pretty good here as well in the green jersey. And then a little bit further behind, this slowly thinning out peloton. But as you say, on these slopes, there is still the benefit of riding on the wheel. They're moving along reasonably quickly. And while there is that benefit, there's no point at all in riding on the front, taking that extra little bit of wind. This man is committed, as you said, tried something earlier on. And he's got a nice cadence going. He's climbing really smoothly here. Lovely fluidity to that pedaling style, which suggests he's well into his rhythm, but he's riding at or around the same pace as the bunch behind. They're not giving him too much leeway, but again, I don't think he's posing a threat. I don't think they're worried about him. I think the bunch behind, the riders who are setting the tempo at the front, are just doing a job, and to keep that pace as high as possible, thin this group out before their respective team leaders go for it near the end.
Yeah, we saw a couple of the other teams, the British team and the French team riding at the front, and now it's the Dutch team with 3 riders up near the front. They're just doing a job for Tijmen Gaat. He's in 14th on 1 minute and 11 seconds. I mistakenly said yesterday after the finish that he lost some time. There was another rider from the Netherlands. He was actually just in the group, right where he needed to be. So he's a little bit behind on the GC, so he's going to have to make up some time. But you saw him there in 3rd position, really a small rider compared to the others. And those are the riders we're mostly going to look for, those slighter riders, just a fewer kilos to take up to this altitude that we're going to see today.
Yeah, good bit of tempo riding being done here by the team from the Netherlands, as though another rider just pulls over to the side of the road. I don't know what's happened there. He's put his foot down. Was that another rider from the Netherlands, as Bussato is about to be caught? 20 years of age, a real talent. He's got a real good kick on him. Excels on the shorter climbs. A good effort to get out in front. I wonder if he's actually just eased up a little bit, knowing that he wasn't moving away. He'll just slot back into the wheels here. So the bunch now all together. Well, I say all together, there's riders dropping away very quickly. But we've seen a couple of riders just literally swing over to the side of the road and come to a grinding halt. Just shows how hard and how deep some of these riders will go before they finally pull the pin.
Yeah, I think what we see in the elites at the moment in the World Tour, all the riders know roughly what they can do, and maybe there's a few watts average sort of either way depending on the day. But for these under 23 riders, they don't know yet what they can do. They don't have that huge bank of data that they can refer to. So for them, it's just going to be sort of guesswork, and we could see some riders blowing up at some stage later on in this climb. We're already seeing some of the lesser climbers blow up already. But at this point, I think what the Dutch team will have done is just make an estimate of what Thymen Gaat can do over this sort of distance, and just sort of ride at that pace to tire everyone else out. Worst case scenario, someone else is better, but then he's at least going to do the best climb he can do. And then the hope will be to have as many riders behind him at the end of the day as possible.
Of course, in this situation here, the riders aren't being instructed at all by the team car. Just a reminder to any of you watching, no race radios. They did have them in the team time trouble, I believe, but not in the road races. So the pace that's been set is decided here and now. As we look at that big cow on the left-hand side there, just relaxing, watching the field pass by. Quick glance over the shoulder there. That's the lovely thing about riding on the front. Glancing over your shoulder, you can look at the devastation behind, but a smaller group, still around 40 riders or so. Try and look where Bussato was slotted in. Well, there he is. He's come to the back here, getting a little bit of medical assistance for the grazing to his left side. Crashed at some point in the course. There was a descent before the first climb of the day, the Montée des Champions et Valois. Could have been there, but we're not too sure. But after that foray off the front, getting some medical attention as we look towards the back, and a couple of the riders from the Mexican team here. Watch out for Mexico today. Isaac del Toro, as they just lighten the load. Towards the back of this group as the riders continue to drop off. It's another one of those signs just on the right-hand side. This is going to be this slow incremental increase in pace. The Italian there nearly riding in to the back of the rider from Belgium. That's Giacomo Villa. He was in the breakaway on day one. I think he was second on the opening stage of this race to Anders Foldega, a teammate. Both ride for the same Italian amateur team. But yeah, this is just a long winch up. Survival of the fittest in these warm conditions. Another rider suffering at the back there. This is Ennecoints Asbalin.
Yeah, and Asparen is actually 11th on the GC, 58 seconds back, so that's one of the riders that we're losing already, who is right up there on GC. We just did see Del Toro from Mexico right at the back as well, but he seemed a little bit more comfortable. I think he's just made the decision to sit at the back, but Asparen not looking too great for the overall at this stage.
No, not with 17 Ks of this climb still to go, getting distance on the lower slopes, with the steepest part of the climb still to come. But a good tempo being set now by Thibaut Del Rosso of the Netherlands. And I think this little group that's just coming back into contention here, I'm sure this must be the riders that were caught in that crash on that corner. There was definitely one or two Danes, or Norwegian riders, should I say. Well, this is the Norwegian squad, or three of them anyway. One of the Austrians at the back there as well. So 3 riders from Norway just about to get back into contention there.
Yeah, it's Johannes Gulset there on the back of that group, the third Norwegian rider there. He is their GC option, it seems, so he's the best climber on that team, and it looks like, just based on the situation, he must have crashed, and he's being brought back now with the full team support, so they're definitely looking after him. Also, just looking at the Austrian champion there, Alexander Hayek is another one of those good climbers that we might be looking for today, and also looks like he might have been caught in that crash because he was behind and is just coming back now. So that sort of looks like we did lose a few riders in that crash, and that's not going to be beneficial for their performance on this climb.
Not at all. But they're back in contention now, and they've been chasing for the best part of 5 or 6 Ks. But I guess what they don't want to do, or what they seem to have done pretty well, and we'll find out later if they've managed to recover a little bit. They had to regain the peloton, but they've just done it incrementally. On a climb like this, given the nature of the race, getting back on, you can actually use this pace to your advantage. And rather than going really deep and getting back on and causing a lot of damage, It's just go just a tiny little bit quicker for a longer period of time. Just slowly winch your way back into contention so you don't push yourself into the red. So some strong team riding done there by the Norwegians to get their man back into contention. As we're sitting at the back here with Jose Ramon Muns. And now it is still the squad from the Netherlands setting that tempo. It was at Del Grosso. He's now swung off and is piping Reindering. All about timing Graz. What do you know about Graz? They're clearly very confident, and they spent a lot of time riding on the front end. Didn't mean to put you on the spot as well, but this is a confident demonstration right now by the squad from the Netherlands.
Yeah, Timon Graz, he's second year under 23, so still on the younger side for this this field. So there's 4 years, of course, involved in the under 23s. He's only in his second year in this category. Finished 5th in the Czech Tour this year, 9th in the Giro Next Gen, so those are some strong results. But his origin story is maybe even more fascinating. He started out just, I think, as an under 17 or an under 19 even, coming to one of the test days that the local sort of, the provincial program, let's say, in Limburg in the Netherlands did, and he just showed up with like a very old bike, not even, we call those clipless pedals, I think, before my time.
Flat pedals, yeah.
Yeah, just flat pedals, and he just outperformed everyone on a 20-minute uphill test, and then immediately he moved into a sort of a support system. People started flocking around him, and yeah, it's just a couple of years later he's already ended up on the Jumbo-Visma development team, and he's being looked after for the overall in Tour 11 year as a second year under 23. So that's one of those stories of just talent development going right. He's still got quite a few things to learn because he started cycling so late, but he's moving up in the ranks, and I think he's one of those talents to really look for. He might not be there quite yet to perform at the highest level in the under 23s this year, but he's definitely getting there in a couple of years' time. And I think, just gonna check that, but I think he's already got a professional contract for the next couple of years. In fact, until 2027. So Jumbo-Visma definitely have some confidence in this man.
It's always nice to learn a little bit more about the background of some of these riders, their route into this wonderful sport. And just looking back again, just to add to what you're talking about, several big wins, won the Istrian Spring Trophy overall, his third race of the year, just outside the top 10 in the Settimana Coppi e Bartoli as well, which is a 2.1, 11th overall in that one. And then with other wins, and as you say, the top 10 overall in the Giro Next Gen, as well as just outside the top 10 in the Alps Isère Tour. So real potential, and as you say, unsurprisingly locked in to a long-term deal. These long-term deals becoming more and more common, in fact have been over the last few years. So a few more riders starting to suffer just at the back here. Some riders in all sorts of difficulty. It looks like that is the figure of Josh Goliker. Getting dropped, finding something else, get it back on the wheel again. There will be some riders yo-yoing up the back, a couple of the Mexican riders as well. Getting dropped, getting back on. As the gradient steepens, it's when you see some riders just dripped off the back, and as the road flattens again and the power to weight shifts in the other direction, another opportunity just to get back in the wheels and hold on for as long as you can. There's a Lucas Nurikar just in the centre, also in the mix there from Switzerland, Jan Christian, looking around. And now it's Colombia now moving through to the front. We haven't spoken too much about the Colombian team. Watch out for Santiago Umba, who has been recommended as one of the big tips today, but is now the first time they hit the front in the Tour de l'Avenir. They've been very quiet so far, and you could say this is their terrain now. They're one of their riders heavily bandaged up on the left-hand side from a previous crash, but right now on the front it is Diego Pescador setting the tempo.
Yeah, Pescador setting the tempo. I'm just going to check if it is actually him. It's Pinzon, I think, in third place with the bandages. They've got a couple of riders, still Umba and Pinzon up there pretty close on the GC, and then they had German Dario Gomez, who was one of their favorites anyway for the overall, but he also crashed early on and lost a lot of time. So there's a couple of riders like this crashing early on. I think most of the GC favourites have already had some kind of problems, but the pace has increased. It seems it's just in one long line, and there's a couple of riders starting to suffer at the back.
Well, the man with Germán Dario Gomez, number 41, who sat in second position, has had a great season so far, 4th overall in the Giro Next Generation, and won the under-23 Tour of Colombia at the start of the year as well. So an impressive ride there, including 2 stage winners. So you'd imagine they're looking after him, although he's sat at second wheel at the moment, Umbatu. But yeah, one of their riders, as you say, that was heavily bandaged. This is the section of the climb now where the gradient eases a little bit. And as you can see, the pace has picked up. They're still lined out. There's still a lot of suffering going on, but more of a benefit just to sit in the wheels here. Try and recuperate a little bit if you can. Lovely road surface, a nice engineered road here as we slowly pick our way through these verdant pastures. Still a lot of climbing still to go, but this is the section that gives way for the next 3 Ks and to the second phase of the climb. But it is Colombia who have now taken things up. Good bit of pace setting by them.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that the Colombians, who have sort of a reputation as being the better climbers, have decided to take over on the flatter section of the climb, with the Dutch probably more renowned for their flat riding, setting the tempo on the earlier, slightly steeper section. But it's the riders will be starting to feel the effort of that long climb now. And you see there one of the riders up there in the overall in the mountain jersey, Ivan Romeo, just not in the line anymore. He's moving backwards. I think he's not going to hold on too much longer.
Yeah, he did say that he wasn't overly looking forward to today's stage, and there it is, polka dots on his back. He won't be wearing that tomorrow, that's for sure, because whoever wins the stage quite likely move into the mountains jersey as well, with those 20 points on offer. The 10 points taken by the Australian earlier on. He's no longer in this league group as the pace quickens, as the gradient lessens ever so slightly, down to about 3 or 4% here. Yeah, it is a strange one, isn't it, that? No harm in setting the tempo here, but there's far more benefit of sitting in the wheels. And if you want to make a difference on the climb, you wait to the steeper gradients. But clearly they're happy. They know what they're doing. Archie Ryan from Ireland is set in about 4th or 5th position there in that green jersey, fully unzipped, riding for the Jumbo-Visma development team, although he's moving to EF Education EasyPost next year, up to World Tour. 14.2 Ks to go as the climb continues. This is relentless, isn't it? Such a long climb. Great to see the riders for the whole way up today. We've pretty much had the whole stage. There's one of the French riders starting to suffer just at the back there. That is Antoine Houbi. Well, that's a surprise. So Houbi now being dropped from the bunch. He can hold on no longer as the Colombians start to turn the screw.
Yeah, Houbi is also was one of the pre-race favourites, but he crashed in the World Championships with just I think it was 1 or 2 laps to go. Crashed quite heavily, abandoned the race, and he's lost some form due to that crash. But he is moving to Soudal Quickstep next year, I believe. So he's got that contract sewn up already. But he's one of those riders who would have been in support for Mathys Rondel, who he could really use. But he's off the back right now.
Yeah, it's no real surprise. Given what you've just said, great shot here. Look at that picture postcard. Absolutely beautiful. Especially for those of you sat at home watching. A little bit different for those riders in the bunch here. It will be suffering to various degrees. Colombia, 3 riders at the front. And that's a blue jersey of theirs. And what an absolutely gorgeous shot. One long line of riders, probably about 35 riders left in the field here on stage 6 of the Tour de l'Avenir. A short stage, not very sweet, 68.5 Ks, 13 and a half of those to go up the fearsome slopes of one of the newest climbs in the Alps to race up. The newly paved, the last part of the climb only paved, or tarmac should I say, in the last 3 or 4 years. First used in the Tour de France in 2020. And we've got that to look forward to today. And I would imagine for most of the riders in this field, they would have seen it on the television, of course. Not too sure how many have ridden it, but I would say that the vast majority don't know what they're going to be up against today. A lot of suffering still to come. As we look at Jan Christian, last man in the group, looks to be suffering a little bit. Jersey flapping in the breeze there. Hanging on to the wheel, in and out of the saddle, as the Colombians continue to press on here. There's another slightly flatter section here through the town. Actually going through Meribel itself. And then we loop our way round. So this is where it's about 4 or 5%. And these next couple of kilometres will go by quite quickly. In fact, they go past a lake as the road winds its way around to the right. And there is actually quite a flat section. So this is an opportunity here to, I wouldn't say rest up, but try and get as tight, get as low as you can, and benefit from that draft before the road starts to kick up.
Yeah, it's going to be with about 10 kilometers to go that we start climbing again. And Jan Christian, he was one of the favorites. Also looked really good the last couple of days, especially yesterday with that second place. Was really disappointed about that. He was going to be one of the riders to look for, but he's starting to drop off the back here, and this is not really a great sign for him at the moment. We saw Del Toro sitting at the back for a while. He's now moving up. Tijmen Gaat as well dropping back. So some of the riders that we have been looking for are just not maybe performing in the way we should would have thought.
Yeah, a couple of the favourites dropping away, suffering. Still a long way to go on this climb. Should just pass through Meribel now. Colombia been on the front now. There we go. Right on cue. The ski resort of Meribel in this beautiful Tarentaise Valley in the Savoie department. Another clutch of riders just falling away at the back here as well. Road kicking up slightly here, up to about 6 or 7%. But as Jens was just saying, this is the gradual part of the climb. Another rider loses contact. Wants a feed at the side of the road. That's one of the Spaniards just getting a bottle from the Norwegian soigneur there. That was Javier Izaza. Good to see the Norwegian soigneur there, happy to give his bidon away, as we see another rider just starting to suffer here at the back. And that is the rider from the Netherlands. That is Tijmen Gaat. They're just starting to get dropped at the back there. Interesting.
Yeah, Gaat and Christian both not looking great at the moment. I think if you're suffering at this point, it's only going to get worse. Although, especially for Gaat, such a slight build, he's likely to perform a little bit better on the steeper portions of this climb. But the fact that he's not sitting comfortably in that group is not a good sign. Santiago Umba as well getting dropped now is also one of the climbers that we were looking for, but yeah, it's not looking too great for him either. It does look like they're working for Pinzon today.
So good riding here by Colombia, relentless tempo being set. Some of the pre-race favourites now falling away. 11.6 kilometres to go, and we're around halfway up the Col de la Loze as another rider slips away, shrinking this group even further. It is Jan Christensen who has gone. Again, the road flattens again here just a little bit, but the second phase of this climb, the second part of this climb, is absolutely brutal. It is like a ramp test. It just gets steeper and steeper the nearer we get to the top. And at the moment, the gradient is relatively gradual. It's even. You can set a rhythm, but at the top, when we get onto the narrower cycle path section of the Col de la Loze, the gradient becomes uneven. A beautiful, smooth surface, but the gradient exceptionally deceptive. As Tijmen Gaat starting to struggle a little bit, his body rocking and rolling a little bit. Certainly seems to be a man right on the ragged edge there, trying to hold on to the wheel of Joseph Blackmore.
Yeah, Joseph Blackmore also at the back. Also, again, not a great sign if you're right at the back at this point. Blackmore, we weren't really sure what he was going to be able to do on climbs like these, but it does look like he's suffering with the length of the climb. I think he might be someone more suited to these the punchier efforts that we saw yesterday, for instance, that we saw in some of the races that he has done this year. But of course, being a mountain biker, he hasn't done too many road races yet, so we don't really know what kind of rider he is, but this is the first sign that maybe he is not the purest climber in the world.
Indeed, there's a couple of other riders. I saw Archie Ryan dropping back as well. Just swung out the line. Whether it's dropping back to get a beat on, I'm not too sure. But certainly not come out the back of the bunch, but he swung off. He was sat about fourth wheel. As we look at the rider slipping back, this is Mats Wenzel of Luxembourg. You can just hear on the radio, so another rider from Colombia there. That's Gomez now, after setting that tempo on the front, is getting dropped. This is Joseph Blackmore. I think we're just passing by Blackmore now. The rider from Great Britain has succumbed to the tempo that's being set, this relentless pace by the Colombian team as we pass through the outer edges of the ski resort of Meribel. It's several little villages. There is a centre to it, but goes on for several Ks. But out, once we've passed through this little part, I did ride this at the Tour this year on a little training ride one morning. I remember this little bit through my suffering. So it's managed to latch on at the back again now, has Thymen Grat. It's passing another rider. These riders are dropping like flies now.
Yeah, Foldager just dropped as well, the green jersey wearer, but it's quite impressive that he was still here, still, again, not quite a pure climber. This was the final opportunity for the riders to get some bottles, for most of them anyway. Of course, the teams parked here. There's no room at the top of the Col de la Loze, so the teams are based in Meribel. It's also where the start was held this morning, so all the teams, the Soniers, right here, giving bottles for that final 10 kilometers. It's going to take a while, those 10 kilometers. But with the pace that Colombians are doing, it's not going to take as long as we might have thought. It's a real fast pace at this point.
Yep.
And they are setting up Pinson for the win. Hopefully for them, with some of the Norwegians now dropping off the back of this group.
Yeah, they've had a difficult climb. A couple of them caught behind a crash. Just at the back, the suffering continues. And that's Embret Svestad Badseng, just slipping away now. Another one of their Soigneurs on the right-hand side of the road. This is a real ferocious tempo that's being set. They've taken it up very, very early. And that one rider there is now done. Has ridden himself into a hole and has swung off. But look at the damage that he's caused, because there is a big attack now. Still 9 Ks to go. And the first real launch has happened here in the Tour de l'Avenir. The American rider there in 3rd position. The only rider in this field to have got a Grand Tour in his legs. And that is Matthew Riccicello, young American riding for the Israel Premier Tech team. And rode the Giro, impressed on several of the big mountain stages. A light climber, and he will certainly like this tempo that's been set at the moment, because there's some big splits, and the yellow jersey is now slipping back. The yellow jersey on the shoulders of Simon Dolby, and Jens with just under 9 Ks to go. There's a definitive split here, and the yellow jersey has capitulated.
Yeah, this is not where you want to be when you're wearing the yellow jersey. It was Edgar Andres Pinson, the Colombian, who made an attack. But it's quite early for his teammate to drop him off. It's not the steepest portions yet, and he wasn't able to drop anyone off the wheel really. But he's going to try it again, and now there is no response whatsoever. Pinson is going solo, but now it looks like Riccicello is feeling the responsibility, and he's going to chase Pinson down.
Yeah, good attack there by Pinson. Attack number 2. But Riccicello certainly not panicking. Rather than punching across the gap, is slowly winding you back in, conscious, and not to make too many stinging efforts. It's so hard to recover. We've still got 8.5 Ks to go. We're coming up now to about 1,600 meters. We're moving into altitude, so those sort of really hard efforts that you make here come at a big cost, don't they?
Yeah, I just saw Hannes Wilks, one of the pre-race favorites, being dropped there. He was not able to follow these accelerations. That's Del Toro, and there's only, I think, 5 riders ahead of him. But you have to imagine these accelerations, the riders are going to feel those in the legs, because that's just tapping into that anaerobic power that they're not going to be able to recover from too easily. It's probably better to, well, physiologically it's definitely better to just ride at one tempo, but there is a race going on, of course, and now we're seeing an attack by William Junior Lesser from Belgium, and I'm just looking at the other riders in this group. Haven't quite been able to identify the other two, but there's certainly one of the Italian riders there in 4th place.
Yeah, Lesser now on the front of this group. Edgar Pinzon has now slipped back into third place. Yeah, as you say, they're in one of the Italians in the blue jersey there. And also, I think it's one of the Mexican riders, I think, in the mix as well there. Looks like it might be Isaac del Toro just towards the back of this group. With the green shorts, as the Belgian swings over the road, looks for some assistance. And Riccicello just moves through on the front. No real cat and mouse just yet. A little bit of a flick of the elbow, suggesting everybody works. Well, this man doesn't want to. Edgar Andres Pinzon attacks again. The 22-year-old. He rides for the continental team at GW Shimano Sidamek, the Conti team. Essentially the Androni Giocattoli team, which folded this year and re-registered as a Colombian team by Gianni Savio, primarily with Colombian riders, primarily racing and riding in Colombia, with a view to building up in the next couple of seasons. But a great attack there. Riccicello looks focused, trying to get back onto the wheel of the South American here. Aggressive racing, and still the hardest part, Jens, of this climb to come. This is fantastic.
Yeah, you see, these are still some of, not the flatter parts, but it's certainly not incredibly steep yet, as we've just lost our pictures. But just going through that group, the last rider I think we haven't mentioned yet was Mathis Rondel, the white jersey wearer for France. So he's still in that group. I've got 2 Italians, 2 Mexican riders, maybe just off the back there. And, well, the other riders we've mentioned, Pinzon, of course, Leclerc, Riccicello, and I forgot everything now. Might be missing 1 or 2 riders. Just thinking that we have not seen Archie Ryan, for instance. That's one of the riders. Simon Dalby here, Johannes Wilks, some of the names that we did expect that we aren't seeing right up there at this point of the climb.
Indeed. I did see Archie Ryan, another attack. This is about the 5th attack now from the Colombian, who's clearly feeling fresh, but at what cost are these going to come? Straight over the top. Riccicello, though, sees the moment, senses it's time to go. Hasn't opened up much of a gap, but a real sharp acceleration there. Glances around, maybe slightly half-hearted there, just a little tester. And here's the rider from Italy, just now moving round to the front, who I haven't quite identified just yet. But we've got 5 riders now moving clear. Riccicello is there. Edgar Pinzon of Colombia is in the mix as well. Le Cerf of Belgium is just towards the back of that group as well. And then there's the man in the white jersey, I think, as you say, that is the Frenchman, Mathis Rondel. And meanwhile, labouring a little bit further down the mountain. Not too far down yet, but maybe it looks like he's the best part of 30 or 40 seconds behind. And still 7.2 kilometres to the top of the fearsome climb of the Col de la Loze here on stage 6 of the Tour de l'Avenir. Another attack. Well, this man is like a Duracell bunny, keeps hitting them hard. And again, the Colombians will be going back to what we were talking about earlier on, Jens, and the advantage for the Colombians in this sort of field because of the amount of time they spend at altitude. They're used to doing these sorts of efforts at this sort of level, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely, but I'm not sure this is the best tactic, just constantly attacking. We just spoke about the right... here we've got the group. It's the 2 Italians, Pellizzari and Piganzoli. I haven't quite figured out who is who, but the rest of the group, the other remaining Mexican rider, Muniz, and then the riders we've been talking about the entire time. But I'm just thinking about those 3 riders behind. They're just setting a consistent pace, working together. They might not benefit from sitting in the wheel of these gradients, but they're definitely setting their own pace and not going over the limit too much. And I think some of these riders at the front, just by that attacking constantly, they are going to lose something towards the top of the climb. So maybe the right tactic by Wilks and by Dalby, and there was another rider with them, I think, Tejero, I think, from the top of my head. They might be doing the right thing by just not following these attacks and just doing their own tempo and maximizing their speed up the climb, while these riders are riding a race and maybe losing some speed by doing it.
Yeah, I do think the smartest way to ride a climb like this, well, depending. Some riders like to attack it, punch, because it breaks the rhythm of the riders behind, puts them in and out of the red zone. But of course, it's not just, you don't have to respond to those attacks. You can just keep trying to make the most linear, or create the most linear sort of effort is ideal. You can moderate and go a little bit quicker, a little bit slower. But once you start going deep, pushing yourself into the red at altitude, recovering from it is very hard. But the Colombians will know that, and they do race in a very different style, going back to the early days of when the Colombians first came over to Europe and raced in the early 80s in the Tour de France. They race with real style, verve, panache, but they do it differently, and I do love to see it. And there is the yellow jersey, just a little bit behind. And this is the part of the climb. This gradient, this type of gradient, is what characterizes the Col de Loze. This is what separates it from a lot of the other climbs out there in the Alps, is this constant rise and fall. Still always very steep, but little bits of flat, then up to 15 and 20% and back down again. So hard to measure your effort on a climb like this.
And arguably this is still part of the easy section. The steepest portions are still coming up, so we've got the early selection, but you've seen there Dalby just maybe 30 seconds behind. That's not over yet. He's almost definitely going to catch someone if they blow up from this front group. And just going back to what you just said about managing that effort, I think we've seen Isaac Del Toro. He responded quite easily to the first attack for Mexico, and then when the second attack went, he just did his own pace, let the riders go, came back at his own pace, and that's an interesting one to look at. Either he's not able to follow the attacks, or he's just decided, you know, this is the tactical situation, they're just going to keep attacking. I'm just not going to follow and ride more efficiently.
Yeah, it's certainly smart from what I've seen so far. Just waiting, biding your time, being patient, and also having confidence in your ability to well. And also, you know the cost. If a rider keeps repeatedly attacking like that, you know that at some point it's going to come at a cost, as we see Pellizzari, Giulio Pellizzari now slipping away from the back of this group. Can't hold on any longer, but he's certainly not panicking, still riding well. Got that low gear in, high frequency pedaling. And as you see, the road just drops there. It's a very small descent, then it picks up again as William Junior Lecerf on the front here for Belgium. He's been setting the tempo for the best part of a kilometre with Matteo Riticello of the United States of America in the Stars and Stripes kit, sat on his wheel. A little bit of looking round now, but this is a good group of riders that's formed. But interestingly, it is Lecerf who's keen to set the tempo here.
Yeah, and he has a reason as well to set the tempo, because he's probably of this group the furthest down on GC, although I think Muniz might be a little bit further down actually. But he's in 30th place, 2 minutes and 29 seconds down on our leader Dalby. So that's a little bit less to the rest of this group. But I actually think, just looking in the background there, I think it's Tercero who's coming quite a lot closer to this group, and Dalby is not that far behind. So the pace has definitely dropped since we saw those attacks.
Yeah, it definitely has. 5.7 Ks to go. You can see now it's almost like we're on a different climb. We're essentially on a bike path. This next phase of the climb is on roads that are pretty narrow all the way up, but a very nice road surface, nice and smooth. But what that doesn't do, unfortunately, is mitigate at all the brutality of the gradients, which will continue to get steeper and steeper and steeper. 5.5 Ks to go, but it's the last 4.5 kilometers of this climb which are absolutely savage. Bounce between 9 and 11%, with pitches of up to 20% as we wend our way around yet another hairpin bend, and the road flattens again, offering these brief little opportunities to get back on, but as soon as you latch back on again, the road kicks up.
Yeah, it's about 10 seconds to Tercero and 15 seconds being reported for the yellow jersey Dalby. But they're having to do all their own work, and I'm pretty sure some of these riders are not doing their maximum effort. They're still sitting, just sort of managing their effort, not maybe going full gas. You see some of the riders really eager to work. We've seen Piganzoli working at the front, Lecer, Pinzon, but I don't think I've seen Mathis Rondel do a single turn on the front. And of course he's not obliged to do a turn at the front, but it just says something about what place of mind these riders are in. Rondel has clearly just decided he's going to save energy, he's going to follow, but he's not going to attack himself. And here again, Del Toro just lets the gap go because these riders have accelerated up a steeper pinch. And I assume he's going to just wind his way back slowly by not going into the red and then riding more efficiently that way.
Yeah, it's moderating the climb as best as possible. A little acceleration there, a sharp, stinging acceleration, although he's throttled it back a little bit now. That was David Piganzoli on the front, just behind him, ever present, William Junior Le Cerf, but just looking at the composition of the general classification, the man who's set to gain the most is Mathis Rondel, he said, of France, sitting pretty, confident in that white jersey. But I tell you what, Simon Dolby isn't too far away. He's pacing himself exceptionally well. Couldn't quite match the pace of the Colombians lower down the climb. As we just look at Isaac Del Toro towards the back of this group, as the road continues to snake its way up this climb. And the difficult thing about the last kilometre is that it's pretty straight. At the moment, you've got this sinuous climb, almost like a corkscrew effect. But as we get towards the top and this climb opens out, as we go past the ski slopes here to the left and right, you can just see the road open up in front of you. It's straight up in front, and they're even harder, I think, to tackle. This climb plays mind games, it really does, and of all the professional riders that have ridden it, most have said that it's probably the hardest and strangest climb in the Alps. And this is in fact the 8th highest paved road in the whole of France, or the highest paved, 8th highest paved mountain path, should I say, in France. As the motorbike just moves away a little bit, and we get a good impression, or the best impression we can, of the gradients coming towards the top of this climb. Now 4.4 k's to go, and still we have this clutch of riders together, 8 riders there, and the rider with most to gain at the moment is the man in France wearing the white jersey, Mathis Rondel, who sits in 2nd place overall, only 13 seconds behind Simon Dolby.
Yeah, it was Muñiz, the Mexican rider, setting the pace just now. He's moved to the back now, I think. He's the only rider who's really not a factor in the overall general classification. He's about 12 minutes down, so we don't really have to look for him in the general classification. All the other riders have definitely got something to gain in the GC. It's now his countryman Del Toro moving to the front for the first time, I think, this climb. So it's interesting to see. Is he going to up the pace? Is he? Well, it does look like it, because there's some riders out at the saddle at the back. It's strung out now, where it wasn't just a minute ago.
Yeah, Del Toro sits in 22nd place himself, at bang on 2 minutes, the same time as Pinzo, who's doing all the attacking earlier on. This is a big acceleration by the man from Mexico. He's been aggressive so far in this race. He's got a little bit of time to make up. Not too far behind is the American, the young American, Matthew Riccicello. Of course, everybody's young in this race. All under 23s. Another slight flattening, carrying momentum into this little hairpin, and there's a split formed. A couple of riders now dropping off the bat because of the tempo being set now by the Mexican rider, shattering this group in the process.
Yeah, he's definitely accelerated, and I think he's just setting his own pace now from now to the top. A lot of riders getting drops. Muñiz was the first to go. Then I think we saw the Italian Pellizzari, and now it looks like Pinzon, our attacker, has dropped. Rondel also off the back. There's only a couple of riders still left, as Le Cerf also gets dropped.
You see that little glance across from the Colombian rider. It glanced into the eyes of the Frenchman. This is the hardest part of the climb now. Le Cerf now getting dropped as well. So there's 3 out in front. Isaac Del Toro looking very good. Mathieu Riccicello in 2nd place, looking behind, and you'll see the Italian. I think that is Piganzoli. Pellizzari has dropped a little bit further back. The road continues to ebb and flow here, gaining elevation very, very quickly. The motorbike giving these riders a little bit of extra space. I think it's in danger of stalling. They're moving so slowly on these brutally steep gradients.
Yeah, I think that's the reason. Isaac Del Toro he's very clearly chosen a strategy this climb. He saw those first attacks, followed one, then sat back for the others, just judging that it wasn't worth following. He would just set his own pace, ride as efficiently as possible while still staying in contact, and sat on the back for most of this climb. And then suddenly he's just decided the last 6 kilometers or 5 kilometers, I think he went, I'm just going to set my own pace, and I'm gonna ride it as fast as I personally can. And yeah, these 2 riders are still in his wheel, but I imagine he's measured this effort perfectly, and he's not going to slow down. So we'll see how long these riders can stay in his wheel, and if they've got anything left to still attack him. But Piganzoli also looks to be suffering now. He's bent low over his handlebars.
He certainly is. Generally tell when a rider's starting to suffer, not just from their facial expressions as they twist their face as they bite against the pain, but also the body starts to shift on the bike. You shift forward on the saddle, shoulders get a little bit more rounded, struggling to find the right gear, but he's still there. He's latched onto the back, but he is certainly suffering. Everybody is fighting their own personal battle up this climb. Still 3.5 kilometers to go, but I tell you what, Del Toro looks pretty calm there. Riccicello looks good as well. Beautiful low cadence there from all of the riders in this front group, and they've stolen the best part, I think, of 20 seconds over the second split, who are now getting distanced. And this does look like it was a clear plan from the Mexican rider to set that tempo, rode patiently, didn't get involved in any of those earlier attacks, particularly by Munoz, but is now not even looking round, not even looking for any support, but look at the views that we are treated to as we head towards the top of the Col de la Lode. It is nothing short of magnificent.
Yeah, we can enjoy the views. I think the riders will not be looking around too much at this moment. They're just suffering, riding as fast as possible up this climb, and to be honest, you can't really go much slower. It's pretty full on at these gradients, and the gap is really going out now. I think we've got clearly these three climbers, or these three riders are the best climbers in this race at this point, and it's actually Pigonzoli's teammate Pellizzari who's setting the pace in this group, which is a bit of a surprise.
Well, the best placed rider in the front group is Matteo Riccicello. He sits at 1 minute and 33 seconds. Haven't seen the time gap now to Simon Dolby. So the man with the most to gain in terms of time is the man from the United States of America as we look a little bit further down the climb. Some big gaps are going to open up. And look at this. This is where the road really bites. This is around 15 or 20% here. They're reduced to nearly walking pace. Romero, Riccicello, and also Piganzoli of Italy. Mexico, the United States of America, and Italy represented. This trio of riders still have 3 kilometers to go, and this climb is unrelenting. But riding with some composure, still happy to set the tempo here, riding his own race here, is the Mexican, who looks pretty relaxed, all things considered, Jens.
Yeah, this is the first time we've seen him open up and try to let Riccicello come through, and Riccicello has taken that as a sign to attack. He's gone right over the top of Del Toro the second he slowed down, and it's now Pigonzoli who's on the front, dragging Del Toro with him for the first time. And this also does look like it's thought about by Del Toro, because the road just flattened off there. He's sitting in the draft again. He's really tactically riding a brilliant race at this point, but Riccicello is moving off the front now, and he's going to have to catch Riccicello at some point if he still wants to win this stage.
Riccicello, as we said, finished the Giro d'Italia, his first ever Grand Tour. His best placing was on one of the hardest stages. It was 11th place on the stage. Stage 20 it was. No, it was the time trial, of course, wasn't it? That was a brutally steep time trial, but was involved in multiple attacks. But he's clawed back here. It was a launch straight over the top, but he is being brought back slowly by Piganzoli. Although, just a matter of meters here equates to 5 or 6 seconds, doesn't it? As the road kicks again. And these riders will be using exceptionally low gears, but even those on these fearsome slopes don't make it very easy at all. As our motorbike stops again, Riccicello comes into view. The Mexican Del Toro trying to close the gap to this American. South America, North America, Italy represented in the front as the riders are scattered all the way down the Col de la Lode. It's one of the most fearsome climbs in cycling. This is a monumental stage. 2 more difficult stages to come in the Alps as Riccicello crests another one of these small rises. The road briefly relents and then horribly kicks again.
Yeah, it's really interesting riding from Del Toro. He just drew out an attack from Riccicello there. Sat in Pigonzoli's wheel until the road started to become steeper again, and then he just rode across without that real peak of acceleration. I would say this is incredibly smart riding, incredibly mature riding as well for someone who's only ridden on the road at this level for 2 years. And he's back with Riccicello. Pigonzoli still a little bit off the back, and here they're going to come through this camera. I'm hoping we can get a timing to some of the riders behind. We just saw Simon Dolby being mentioned at, what was it, 1:15, but I think that gap's going out even more now.
It certainly has. Remember the time gap, 1:33. The best placed rider in this group is Matteo Riccicello. He has got Isaac Del Toro for company, and the man who's still fighting gamely, David Piganzoli, the 21-year-old Italian, rides at pro team level, rides for Jola Cometa.
Yeah, so this is Pellizzari at just over 30 seconds. We saw two more riders come into view there who are going to be just over 40 seconds, I think. Here, Pinson and Leclerc. And I think we're just waiting for Mathis Rondel behind him. He's the best placed rider in this group, and he's still gonna probably be up there on the GC. Tercero is just coming in behind him there at just under 1 minute at this point.
Yeah, just behind the Frenchman. These gradients are so steep. It's very difficult to actually ride at any pace but your own. It's hard to follow the wheel here. The rhythm constantly broken, but the Mexican now really piling on the pressure as this road continues to undulate, gaining elevation, losing it briefly. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back on this climb, but look at that. This ribbon of road strewn across this mountain, this beautiful mountain. It's a lovely clear day here, but Mexico lead the United States of America. Italy struggling in the wake of the pace being set by the man on the front, Isaac Del Toro, who's having a magnificent race. He's ridden such a strong, but as you were saying, Jens, intelligent race so far, but Riccicello looks like he's still got a lot of spark there as well.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you at this point who's going to win this stage, but it's pretty clear that both of them are going to be up there this week. Piganzoli, just looking at the GC, he's on 129 at the moment. If we look back to Riccicello, is at 133, so those are really close. Del Toro lost a little bit more in the team time trial, of course, losing 2 minutes there, the maximum amount that the teams were allowed to lose. But these two riders within 31 seconds of each other on the GC, so if they remain close together on the GC, we're definitely going to get a very interesting final 2 stages.
Yeah, we certainly are. Just look at that view. The rider there, I can tell that isn't one of the competitors. It's somebody who's decided to climb this hill themselves. I think it'd be better off walking almost. It's that hard. It really is. The last few meters of this climb, nothing short of brutal. Now this is important here. Riccicello needs to power on. He'd love to win the stage, of course, but more importantly, one would imagine he wants to move himself in to the Maillot Jaune, into the yellow jersey. Simon Dolby, quite a long way down the mountain, definitely a minute or more behind, maybe even a little bit more than that. In fact, we've not caught sight of him at all. But Del Toro now moves through to the front, and as you quite rightly said, I missed Piganzoli, as you say, just a few seconds in front of the American. So Riccicello needs to keep on riding, not just for the stage win here, but he's not that far away from moving himself in to the Maillot Jaune, unless, of course, Isaac Del Toro can take the best part of 27 seconds out of the American as the road kicks up once more. 1,200 meters to go, and Piganzoli is not done yet. Gaining a little bit of ground, but then the road rears up. So difficult this climb is. 1,200 meters. Who's it going to be? Isaac Del Toro of Mexico versus Matteo Riccicello of the USA. What a fantastic fight we're seeing on the slopes of the Col de la Loze.
Yeah, and again, looking at the GC, Mathis Rondel, last time we saw he was still at less than a minute. Simon Dalby is now being called at 1 minute 45, so they're not going to be too far out of it. If this is just a bad day for them, they're still going to be very close, because they're not going to be more than a minute behind at this point if Riccicello does take over the jersey. And here he goes. It's a final attack. Del Toro, is he able to follow?
Oh, big launch there by Riccicello. He does. He's turning a sprocket also higher. Riccicello using a lower gear here, opening up a small lead. It looks as if the man from Mexico is starting to struggle again, fighting with his bike as this man continues his pursuit. David Piganzoli is dropping away a little bit now as the American forces his way up this climb. But I tell you what, the Mexican isn't done yet. He's opened up a couple of bike lengths now. We've only got about 800 meters to go, but the road continues to rise. Spectacular scenes here, and we still cannot call this one, Jens.
No, this is exactly how Del Toro has been riding this stage, and also how Riccitello has been riding. Riccitello constantly on the attack, following moves by Pinzon earlier in the climb, now going himself a couple times, but Del Toro has just decided to do his own pace, not to go over the limit. Although it does look like he's starting to struggle, he's still not out of it. He's only a couple seconds back, and he might just be able to claw this back if he keeps on doing his own thing. Riccitello, maybe he's gone over the limit a little bit on that attack, and he's starting to suffer as well. They're still right next to each other, and I think Del Toro has actually made it back to the back wheel of Riccitello now.
It looks like he has. It's so hard just to close that last meter. It is just a matter of 2 or 3 meters, but he is now latching himself back into contention. Another nervous glance round from Matthew Riccitello, but the Mexican is back in contact. Isaac Del Toro moves over to the left-hand side. He glances around, and it's now daylight between them and the Italian, who is the best placed rider on the general classification of the 3 riders up the road. But it looks as if it would be Matthew Riccitello now is going to move into the yellow jersey unless Simon Dolby can do something special. This is the man in 3rd position on the mountain, fighting his own personal battle as we get ever nearer the finish here. What a stage it has been. This is stage 6 of the Tour de l'Avenir. From Méribel to the brutal summit finish at the Col d'Île-aux, 2,296 meters above sea level. And again, this time, turning a huge gear, it's Isaac Del Toro who moves through to the front, trying to drop the American, who is struggling in his wake.
I don't even think it's an attack at this point. They're just hanging on for dear life, trying to get to the finish. This is one of the steepest climbs in cycling at the moment, and Del Toro is still leading. Riccitello right on his wheel. Has he still got any energy left, or well, it's going to be very close coming into the finish with only just over 100 meters to go.
Well, here we go. We're coming into the finishing straight now. Riccitello versus Del Toro. Who is going to emerge victorious? The crowd banging the boards here. Nobody's coming into view just yet, and it is Del Toro just in front. Del Toro looks like he's stolen a march from Riccitello. It's going to be Mexico that take the win here. What? Isaac Del Toro takes victory atop the Col d'Île-aux to take stage 6 of the Tour de l'Avenir. Matthew Riccitello in 2nd place for the United States of America. What a fine ride by him. And the clock has started. Simon Dolby started the day in the yellow jersey. 1:33 behind was Riccitello. This is the Italian coming into view now. Superb ride by David Pignazzoli of Italy, fighting all the way. This will move him right up into contention. It should be 2nd overall on the day, but it all depends on what Simon Dolby can do, of course. But this man has gone so deep. What a ride. Perfectly paced, had the punch at the end to take the biggest win of his career, and look at what it means. But look how deep he has gone. A spent force, but a victorious one.
Yeah, I'm just going to guess that this is the first stage win by a Mexican rider in Tour de l'Avenir history. I don't think I need to look that one up. Just going to put it out there. I think that must be it. 30 seconds for Pignazzoli on this stage, and now we're going to get his teammate Pellizzari, who's going to lose more than a minute. So the gap's really going out on that final steep kilometer. Del Toro just paced it perfectly. He did his own thing. He didn't go with those accelerations early on the climb, and that benefited him at the end.
It's Pellizzari crosses the line. Now it's the Belgian, William Junior Lesurf, who crosses the line. And the man that did a lot of the damage earlier on, Pinzon, now crosses the line for Colombia. Everybody has ridden themselves into the ground on this brutal climb. But what a ride by Isaac Del Toro. He rides for the AR Monix Pro Cycling Team. He's only 19 years of age as well. And as we look at the best young rider, this jersey will be moving from this man's shoulders, possibly to the Mexicans. We'll have to double check on the timings, but this is Matthias Rondel, the first of the Frenchmen home, stops the clock and is assisted by one of the helpers there, because he's gone so deep. Another one of the Mexican riders coming through now as well. This is Munoz, or Muniz, should I say. Still no sign of the yellow jersey. So I think it is going to be moving on to the shoulders of Mathieu Riccitello.
Yeah, I think we're pretty safe in saying that here we've got Johannes Kulset and Jan Christen, who got dropped fairly early on the climb. They're coming across the finish line now. I think Simon Dalby might have gone a little bit too deep, but this is that sprint. Del Toro just paced until the final couple meters and then accelerated away from Riccitello. Just had a little bit more left there in the end.
Yeah, got dropped in the about 600 meters to go, but paced him. That's what he did so well on this climb. Kept calm, kept a cool head, and in the end had what was needed to take a sensational victory. The riders will be finishing for the best part of half an hour on this climb, I can tell you that. They'll be spread all over the mountain. As the team cars trickle across the line, we should get confirmation of the result and hopefully look at what the general classification looks like as we look at the view. This awe-inspiring view across the Alps here. This is the Col de la Loze as it snakes its way down the mountainside here in the valley. The Tarentaise Valley is where we are. But now a sensational stage. We knew it would be a decisive stage in this race. Still two very difficult stages to come as well. Three, in fact. Tomorrow is a split stage. Time trial in the morning. Then another short, punchy mountaintop finish, and then another hilly stage to round up the race on Sunday as well. So lots of racing still to come. You can see it, of course, here on GCN Plus. So make sure you watch along with the Vuelta as well. The Spanish stage race. The final Grand Tour of the season starts, of course, tomorrow. Finishing in 3 weeks' time in Madrid as the riders continue to come home. This looks like it is Nurikar now coming through. Probably the best part of 3 or 4 minutes. And these riders still inside the top 20. So we're going to have a very distinct looking general classification with enormous time gaps at the end of today, Jens.
Yes, enormous time gaps, but I think the first 4 riders, it looks like, are going to be quite close together, probably.
They are, yeah.
Within just sort of half a minute, that sort of area. I think we're going to have Riccitello at the front. And then just looking at this, I think Bigonzoli might just hold on for second place in front of Del Toro. And then Mathies Blondel had quite a big gap ahead of this stage. On those riders, he's going to be about half a minute back as well. But we have seen Simon Dalby come across the line. He's going to lose some time, but he'll still be up there in the top 10. But we'll still have to wait for the actual confirmation of the results, because I'm not going to be able to do all those calculations myself now.
No, definitely not. We'll leave that to the organisers. But we definitely know who the winner was. So Isaac Del Toro of Mexico took the win ahead of Matthew Riccitello of America. David Bigonzoli of Italy third. Fourth place to Italy as well, Giulio Pellizzari. And then William Junior Lesurf of Belgium. Fifth place on the day. Well, I hope you enjoyed that stage. We certainly did. Not so sure about the riders. A new looking general classification as we head into the weekend. Still 3 decisive stages to come. As the riders continue to file home. Hopefully we'll get a chat with one of the riders at the top of the classification, maybe Riccitello. Hopefully it'd be lovely to get a word with Isaac Del Toro as well. So we'll wait patiently as the riders continue to file over the top of this climb. All of these riders have gone exceptionally deep today. I think it's fair to say, Jens, but just it's a fair feat just riding this climb, let alone racing it.
Yeah, I think all of the riders starting today will be able to ride it, but that in itself is saying something. If we have to point out that they are in fact able to ride it, that says something. As I think some of these percentages at the top are similar to the Mur de Huy, which is already in itself hard to ride, but that's only a kilometer, just over a kilometer long, and this one's 23 kilometers in length. Obviously not as steep the whole way up, but we saw just the best under 23 riders in the world right now struggling to even get up this climb at any kind of speed. The slower riders are going to have real trouble, and I think any even well-trained amateurs will have a huge amount of trouble just getting up the climb and not even setting a time, but just actually riding up it. It's so steep.
Interesting to see any new Strava records broken today. But Isaac Del Toro, well, that will live long in the memory And I think you're right. I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but I think you might be quite right. They could be the first Mexican to have won a stage, and there's going to be some interesting team managers looking at this young rider after that performance today. A composed performance, clearly a strong one. Here's the King of the Mountains, the deposed King of the Mountains. The new King of the Mountains will be the stage winner, 20 points on offer. But the man that's just crossed the line, Ivan Romeo, won't forget that stage win yesterday when he rides at the World Tour level. But certainly wasn't looking forward to this one. But has still finished pretty highly on the stage. Looks like a definite top 30 position there. But just thinking about tomorrow's stage as we wait for some interviews, hopefully. In the morning, they have the 11.1 kilometre uphill time trial at Les Carélis, Montricher, Alben, Les Carélis. And then in the afternoon, it's Les Carélis to Valsinis, Col du Mont-Cenis. So they drop off and then winch their way up to the top. We're just past the top of the second category climb. So it is a mountaintop finish, although the top of the climb comes with about 5 k's to go, and they finish on a plateau. So another mountaintop finish, but slightly different. But another short stage, 69.6, but a split day tomorrow. We won't have pictures of the individual time trial, but we'll certainly get you that result. But we will be focusing on the afternoon stage. Similar distance to today, just up and down. And then the final stage of the race on Sunday, we start in Valsigny again, and we finish in Sainte-Foy d'Arinthez, another mountainous stage with another first category ascent to the line. So we're going to have a very well-deserved winner of this race, that is for sure. It just gets harder and harder and harder. There is the green jersey, that's Anders Foldager. May have changed today. Don't think he scored any points on the board today. Interesting, there was no intermediate sprint today for their green jersey. Here we go. I think we're going to have a chat with our stage winner.
Isaac, you won the Queen stage for this race.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know what to say, but this is unbelievable.
That was a crazy climb.
Yeah, to be honest, it's too long, but I enjoy very much. I tried to cut all the seconds, but it was crazy. All day, it's I don't know what to say.
Now you want to win the general classification?
I don't know. I try to enjoy today, and let's see tomorrow.
Thanks, Isaac.
I love these casual interviews, I really, really do. But he's still completely spent. The club that he rides for, the AR Monex Pro Cycling Team, aren't even a UCI team, they're a club team. He's 19 years of age, and that performance, he was 9th on yesterday's stage 5. First today. I think regardless of what happens in the rest of the race, he will be high up on the general classification now. I think there's going to be he's going to have a few phone calls and a few conversations over the coming days about his future. And this is what this race is all about. It is the Tour of the future. But we have a new star from Mexico without a shadow of a doubt.
Oh, here we go. This is Archie Ryan, it looks like, coming across the line. So definitely not the day he'd hoped for. Finishing much further down than we would have expected. But it's understandable given the injuries that he's had this year, struggling with his knee tendonitis, I think. He was off the bike for a long time. That's probably the reason. But just on that team that he rides for, Isaac Del Toro, it's a club team based in San Marino, just because the Mexican Federation has sort of collapsed over the last couple of years. There's not really any official federation connected to the UCI, so that's some of the background. But it's a program with a lot of different riders. We saw Muñiz as well coming up here. That team is actually running the Mexican team right now. But we're just going to see some pictures for a recap of today.
Yep. We started earlier on in Maribel. The stage distance today, short, 68.5 k's. But of course, they finished up the fearsome climb of the Col de Loze. We had an early breakaway that went clear, gained only about 30 seconds. And the bunch never too far away. A couple of Dutch riders in the mix as well. First climb being taken by Liam Walsh actually today of Australia, but initial chasing was done by the French team, looking after Matthias Rondel, who was wearing the white jersey. One of the riders up in front earlier on was the Italian Francesco Bussato, who was eventually reclaimed by the peloton, although he did persist. Ended up dropping the rider that he was with from Norway. That was Sakaios Kola Luland. Still a furious pace being set by the French for the vast majority of the lower part of the climb. The Dutch then took over. It wasn't to be the day from the team for the Netherlands, unfortunately. Another rider that featured in the early breakaway, Pepijn Reinderdink, also did a lot of pace setting earlier on. Still with about 15 k's to go of the climb up to the top of the Col de la Loze. Bussato was taken back. Meanwhile, the King of the Mountains, Ivan Romeo, started to feel the pinch as the climb continued. Best part of an hour of climbing on the Col de la Loze today, climbing well up into altitude. The 8th highest tarmac mountain pass in France. First used in the Tour de France in 2020, and that was the direction of travel today. Upwards towards the heavens. Colombia picked things up. They were looking after Edgar, and there's Pinzon, Santiago Umba as well. And this was the man that did most attacking, so midway up, no, say with about 8 or 9 k's to go, Pinzon led off a series of attacks, which ultimately saw Simon Dolby, the maillot jaune, the yellow jersey, getting dropped, couldn't take the pace any longer as we passed through Meribel. Another stinging move here by the Colombian, gradually causing the group behind to fragment. And the cream eventually rose to the top. Mathieu Riticello was there, William Le Cerf of Belgium was there as well. Pinzon, Rondel was there briefly, but the man that rode the perfect race today was this man, Isaac Del Toro of Mexico. Rode his own race, set the tempo when he needed to, didn't respond to any of the shenanigans earlier on, and set a relentless pace that only Riticello could match. With them for company was Piganzoli of Italy. The American tried his hand on a couple of occasions, did manage to move clear, but there was no panic from the Mexican. In fact, Del Toro forcing Piganzoli to chase. Piganzoli drifting off the back. They stayed together just until the last 100 meters, and then a real surge, a violent acceleration by the Mexican saw him take the win atop the mighty Col de Loze, just ahead of Riticello. So memorable day, Jens.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we're in for two really good days from now on. Tomorrow is going to be very tough, and then the final day with some bad weather expected on top of Col d'Iseran. It's that's going to add even more interest. I think there's not much different to expect from those days than from today.
Indeed. Well, there is the final result. Isaac Del Toro of Mexico took the win, 1 second in front of Mathieu Riticello. David Piganzoli in third there.
So, yellow jersey, it's a dream for you.
Leader.
Yeah, it's a dream. It's the last couple months I've been, yeah, I mean, a day didn't go by where I wasn't thinking about trying to be in the yellow in this race, and I mean, there's still a couple days left, so, but yeah, I'm really happy to be in the yellow after today.
You want to image the general classification now?
Yeah, for sure. It's try and hold on to the jersey until the end, yeah.
Your opponent, Isaac, Davide, for the yellow jersey?
Yeah, he was really strong today. I mean, yeah, he was, Isaac, yeah, of course, it was just me and him in the end, so he'll be a super tough component for the next couple of days.
Thank you.
Well, there we go, Mathieu Riticello in the yellow jersey for the United States of America. Greg LeMond, of course, took the win for America back in the early 1980s before going on to win the Tour de France on 3 occasions, of course. So that is the situation of the stage again. So Del Toro took the win over Riticello, Piganzoli, Pellizzari, and then the Belgian Le Cerf, Pinzon, Villalba in 6th. Fernando Lopez of Spain there in 7th. Matthias Rondel in 8th, the first Frenchman home. The teammate of the winner, Ramon Jose Muniz Vasquez there in 9th, and then Johannes Kulset of Norway in 10th place. 2 minutes and 19 seconds, Jens, separating the top 10 today. I'll be intrigued to see what the last man finishes in today, as we continue to see riders crossing the line here. One of the Poles and a Kazakh crossing the line. Still haven't got word on the exact composition, or the exact look, should I say, of the general classification. But one thing we do know is that the American will take a small lead into the next couple of stages with that crucial time trial. So not a lot of opportunity to recover at all here, Jens.
No, it's going to be an intense couple of days as we see the riders coming in. But I'm just going to have to make a correction, because just saw on Twitter that Isaac Del Toro is not actually the first Mexican stage winner in Tour de l'Avenir.
Right.
It was Julio Perez Cuapio who won in 1969, so that's a while ago. I think I can maybe be forgiven for a stage that happened about 30 years before I was born.
Yes.
But that was tweeted up by Amati Gioiali, quite a famous Twitter account, I think. And then the other thing is there's some more info on Del Toro. Probably find that on my Twitter account, just at Jens Decker. Just going to plug that here. But that was from Peloton Mag, did a big thread on him a couple of days ago. So if you're interested, just look that up. Yeah, that's the info on Del Toro, and yeah, it's a fascinating character. I think we're definitely going to see more of him fairly soon.
Oh, I think so. As you say, he will be in the white jersey, best young rider. There is a separate classification in the Tour de l'Avenir for the best young rider. Although everybody is under 23, of course, the best young rider goes to, well, it's fought out between riders born in either 2003 or 2004. So there is a separate white jersey competition within for riders who are particularly young, as a big clutch of riders files across the line here. Not too sure if that's a smile or a grimace, maybe a combination of the two for the rider from Canada there. So it's the best part of 20 minutes now. The riders continue to file across the line here, and more of the same tomorrow. A brutal 11.1k individual time trial to kick things off tomorrow. Stage 7A, should I say, and then a 69-kilometre stage in the afternoon for good measure. And we finish things off with a really punchy mountain stage on Sunday. So a lot more action to come. I do feel there's big potential for some more reshuffling, but we've seen two of the strongest riders today without a shadow of a doubt, but a very different sort of climb compared to the ones we've got to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing we do have to look out for is the time limit. It's only half an hour probably today. The stage finished in 2:04. It's a 25% time limit. So that's going to be about, well, just over half an hour. So these riders still looking fairly comfortable, but I think there's going to be a couple worried riders still on that mountain now.
I think so. Normally 25%. Double check. 25% in the team time trial. So it's a different time cut for every day. And there we go. This is the GC. This is what we've been waiting for. Riticello now leads 25 seconds in front of David Biganzoli of Italy. The stage winner today, Isaac Del Toro Romero, there in third at 26. Then we have the Frenchman Mathis Rondel in fourth at 38. Fernando Lopez at 56. Pellizzari of Italy at 111. Dolby, the deposed leader of this race, there in seventh at 115. Jan Christian of Switzerland at 124. Edgar Andres Pinzon Villalba, there the first of the Colombians, in ninth at 158. Then rounding out the top 10 from Belgium at 217, William Junior Lesurf. That is your top 10 as we head into the weekend and the three final stages of what has been a magnificent, a wonderful race. I hope you've enjoyed it. Myself and Jens certainly have, and we'll be taking you through the final three stages over the weekend. So thanks again. We'll see you again tomorrow. Make sure you do not miss it. But for now, from me, Matt Stevens, and from Jens Decker, it's au revoir.